All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and the Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video as we talk a little bit about if the Niners do move off of Brandon Aiyuk and decided to go rookie wide receiver in round one. What do those receivers look like? We talk about it next. First, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. Go say hi to Damon and Mary, get some brisket, tell them that Larry Krueger sent you. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Brandon Aiyuk dilemma and where this thing could be going. Now, a very interesting contract impasse seems to be looming between Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers. Aiyuk is entering the final year of his rookie contract. He wants to get paid. He wants to get paid long term. And the wide receiver market continues to explode and advance and grow. And the money owed to these free agent wide receivers is bigger by the moment. Aiyuk is doing the cryptic social media moves now on X, putting out comments and, this and that, and tweeting back and forth with Mike Tomlin. And the problem with the 49ers is just they love them, but they're loaded with huge contracts on their books. So is this going to be DeForest Buckner, Eric Armstead part two? In that situation, the Niners traded Buckner for a mid-first round pick, used it on Javon Kinlaw after Super Bowl 54 against Kansas City, and it didn't work out. As Buckner went on to greatness, Armstead kind of plateaued. Kinlaw never became anything close to what Buckner became and is now a New York Jet. The question is this: can the Niners afford to pay Brandon Aiyuk? And then the other question is, can they afford not to? He's a very, very key guy for them offensively. So what do they do? That's the question. What do they do? Will they trade Aiyuk for a pick or picks? Will they try to save money? This year's wide receiver draft class is exceptionally deep. And you would think, it sounds like Jacksonville may have called on Aiyuk. They've got the 17th pick overall. Pittsburgh has shown interest in Aiyuk, if you believe the reports. They picked 20th overall. The Colts, there's a lot of people saying the Colts have interest in Brandon Aiyuk. The Colts have a rookie quarterback in Anthony Richardson, and so they can do what they want to do. They pick 15th in the first round. And, you would think the price tag for Aiyuk minimum is going to be a late first round pick or maybe multiple picks, including high second round picks. So that brings us to, well, what are they going to do if they get a high pick? If they decide to move Brandon Aiyuk for a mid first round pick, what are they going to do? Well, they've scouted J.C. Latham. They've scouted Fugaisi, or Fuguaga, I should say, Talieisi Fuaga. And those are the two first round offensive tackles that are probably going to go in the teens ahead of them. So then it comes down to, do you trade Aiyuk and try to replace him with one of these receivers that's in the draft? And they may go that route. So let's talk a little bit about a handful of the receivers that are supposed to go anywhere from the middle of the first round to the middle of the second round. Let's start with the LSU kid. Malik Neighbors, they say, is the best wide receiver at LSU. Brian Thomas is the guy who they have down at second. He's 6'4", 205 pounds. He's 21. He ran 4.33. He's got size. He's got length. He's got speed. He's a big play wide receiver. He definitely needs to work on some things. His intermediate route running needs to get better. Like lots of receivers coming into the NFL, he needs refinement into and out of his breaks as far as his footwork and selling his route running and so on and so forth. But you can't debate this kid's size, speed, and playmaking ability, man. He's big, he's fast, and he makes plays. And this last year, he played 13 games. He had 68 receptions, 1,177 yards, 17.3 yards per catch, 17 touchdowns. That's a lot of touchdowns. So Brian Thomas is intriguing. If they got the 15th pick from the Colts and Thomas was on the board, would the Niners simply do what they did with, with Buckner and Kinlaw and just replace Aiyuk with Thomas? Could happen. Could easily happen. An entertaining receiver if you watch him on film. All right, let's move to the second guy. Keon Coleman, the Florida State wide receiver, 6'4", 215 pounds. He's even younger. He's only 20. What really stands out about Keon Coleman is the huge catch radius. He's a leaper who makes big plays in the air. He's very physical. He needs a lot of work on his footwork. And he doesn't have elite top-end speed. This is a guy that I just could not pull the trigger on because he runs 4.61 for the stopwatch. There's no separation there. It's hard to separate from NFL corners if you run 4.61. Now, this year he played 12 games. He had 50 receptions, 658 receiving yards, 13.2 yards per game, 11 touchdowns. He's a big-time player, but he's great in the red zone. He's got a huge catch radius. He'll battle like crazy at the catch point. He's big at the catch point. But I don't see him separating from NFL receivers. So I would say no as far as drafting Keon Coleman. As much as I like Keon Coleman, I would say that's not the guy. That's not the guy for them. All right, let's move on to the next guy, Xavier Legette. And this guy's amazing. 6'3", 227. He's 23. He was a wide receiver from South Carolina, big frame. This guy explodes after the catch. I mean, there's a lot of Debo in this guy. He's fluid into and out of his breaks. He's a fifth-year senior. He ran 4.39 for the stopwatch at 227 pounds. I mean, that's burning. That's really cooking at 230 almost. Fifth-year senior, had only 5 touchdowns in his first 4 seasons, but he had 7 this year in 2023. In fact, this was the breakout year. 12 games, 71 receptions, 1,255 total yards, 17.7 yards per catch, and 7 touchdowns. The big question with Legette, he's a little bit of a one-year wonder. I mean, he as I said, he only had 5 touchdowns total in his first 4 seasons, but he had 7 this year. So there are some people that are a little worried based on just a 1 year of production if he's going to be able to do it. I really like him. I think he's special. That's a receiver that I would definitely, go draft if I were the 49ers. All right, let's move on to Adonai Mitchell, the wide receiver from Texas, one of the two. 6'4", 195 pounds. He's 21 years old. He's a smart player. He's kind of a little bit of a long strider. And he's as a route runner. As a route runner, he's kind of a little bit of a long strider. Started at Georgia, transferred to Texas, really good on the deep ball. Ran 4.34 for the stopwatch. Plenty fast. This year, he had 14 games. He had 845 yards, 15.4 yards per carry, and 11 touchdowns this year. I like him. I really like him. He's a little angular, and I kind of wonder about just the route running because I don't see the quick feet in and out of breaks. He's a little bit more of a glider, but 4.34 speed at 6'4" with pretty good ball production, pretty good production across the board. He's a good football player. There's no question. Adonai Mitchell's a good football player. I kind of worry about the durability. I don't see the durability. Like I see Aiyuk being far more durable than Adonai Mitchell. All right, let's go to the next guy, Xavier Worthy, wide receiver from Texas. Now, this is another guy who runs in 75 pounds. There's a lot of teams in the NFL that just won't draft anybody who's under $180. And I understand why, because they're always one hit away from the end. And that's the thing about Xavier Worthy. He's an explosive runner. He's a competitive player. He's scheme versatile. But he's 170-something pounds. And there's some durability concerns. Also, he 14 games this year. To me, he's a good football player, but he's more of a track runner and a stopwatch runner than he is. I mean, that would be my concern. I'm very concerned about his durability. And I think durability is a big factor. I mean, availability is the number one ability. If you're not available, you can't help your team. But so there you go, Xavier Worthy. And the last guy on my list is another guy that I really, really like, and that's Malachi Corley. Great name, by the way. Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. He's kind of your poor man's Debo. 5'11", 210 pounds. He's 22. He's really strong. Really strong. Catch point. Now he lacks a little long speed. He ran this year. He played in 12 games, 79 receptions, which is a lot, 984 receiving yards, 12.5 yards per catch, 11 touchdowns. So Malachi Corley was very productive for the Hilltoppers. I would just say this. I'm not in favor of moving Aiyuk. I'd rather see them pay Aiyuk. If they're going to move Aiyuk, I think I'd rather go take, one of the premier offensive tackles and see if I could find receivers down the board, because there are Malik Washington and there's some other receivers that I really like down the board. But of the first round crew, if the Niners decided, okay, we're moving off of Aiyuk, we're going to get a mid first round pick and we want to use that mid first round pick on a receiver, my rankings would be Brian Thomas would be my first choice. There's something very, very special about Brian Thomas. I just think that you could look up halfway through the year and be like, Brian Thomas is better than Brandon Aiyuk. So there's that. Then there's Xavier Legette, who I think, reminds me a lot of an A.J. Brown, a little bit of a Debo, a little bit of an A.J. Brown. I think there's some route running adjustments there, but I think he at 6'3", 230 is going to be a very, very good NFL player. The Texas kids I would avoid. I love Mitchell more than Worthy as a receiver. I love Worthy's speed more than Mitchell's speed, but both of them are very fast. Mitchell runs in the 4.3s. Worthy runs in the 4.2s. And then there's Malachi Corley, and it's like, man, Corley I think is going to be a really good player, maybe even right away. I liked what I saw this year at Western Kentucky. I think he's going to be good. So to me, it's Corley, Xavier Legette, and Brian Thomas, with Thomas being the first guy off the board, and then Legette, and then Corley. And if you could, Corley and Legette are the kinds of receivers where you might be able to take an offensive lineman in the middle of the first round and take those guys at 31. If you really want Brian Thomas, you're probably going to have to take him, in that pick that you get in the teens for Aiyuk. But there you go. There's, how I see the wide receivers in the first round. If you're talking about beyond the first round, there's no question this is a very good wide receiver group. So I didn't even mention Marvin Harrison or Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze because those guys are probably going top 10. Ladd McConkey is interesting. He's a great route runner. I don't know that I think I'd rather have Aiyuk than Ladd McConkey. Not a big fan of Troy Franklin. Another guy who only weighs about 175 pounds out of Oregon. Ricky Pearsall's a good receiver from Florida, probably more of a third-round guy. Roman Wilson's a good receiver from Michigan, probably more of a third-round guy. Devontae Walker is 6'3", 200 pounds from North Carolina. Tremendous size, speed, but he drops the ball. I think there's some inconsistency with Jalen Polk, with Jermaine Burton. I like Brendan Rice, but I don't see super special. Johnny Wilson, 6'6", 240. He might be more of a glorified tight end. Luke McCaffrey is interesting, from the, you're talking about day 3 in the 4th round. Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint from Georgia in the 5th round, kind of like him. And then, there's a couple guys long, down the board. Tyler Harrell, who's 6 feet tall from Miami, just an incredible burner. I think he would be a nice day 3 wide receiver. And then there's some slot receivers that probably have to be accounted for as well. Malik Washington from Virginia. Virginia was a bad football team this year, but man, Malik Washington's production was off the charts. And he's smart, he's tough, he's quick. He's only about 5'8", 195. But Malik Washington's a really good receiver. Jacob Cowing from Arizona ran exceptionally well. He's also 175 pounds. Aeneas Smith from Texas A&M is a good receiver for sure. Jaquan Burton from Florida Atlantic is a 5'10", 187-pound receiver. So he's an interesting guy. He's got great wheels as well. Tulu Griffin from Mississippi State can fly. Anthony Gould from Oregon State can really run. Taj Washington's a terrific route runner for USC. So there's some guys. There are definitely some interesting receivers there. But as far as first round NFL receivers, if you're really trading Brandon Aiyuk and saying, you know what, we're going to take a pick and we're going to try to replace Brandon Aiyuk in the first round, I would say Brian Thomas can replace him. Other than that, I would probably say Xavier Legette and Malachi Corley could be replacement level. But I think you'd be drafting them, 15 picks too early if you draft them in the middle of the first round. So there you go. Do the Niners want to trade Brandon Aiyuk? Doesn't sound like it. But if his money gets out of control and they have Indy, Pittsburgh, or Jacksonville knocking at the door, and you could replace him with Brian Thomas from LSU, it's something I think John Lynch ought to look into. All right, thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. And now let's get a word from our sponsor of this video, Aura. Have you ever typed your name on the internet and seen all of your private information is online? Are you tired of receiving tons of spam calls from random numbers? Are you receiving more and more of these as time has gone on? Well, that's where Aura, the sponsor of today's show, can really help you out. Data brokers sell your information to scammers and spammers and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, your email, your home address, all your records, your health records, who your relatives are. It's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it also protects me from hackers who could use the information to help them access my social media accounts, my bank accounts, or any other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats I can't see. I get other features like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more without having to download several different apps. It's really easy to set up. And best of all, I get everything at one affordable price. I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to the link in the description to start your 2-week free trial. And thanks to Aura for sponsoring this video. And thanks to all you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.